Hey Eagle fans, I'm Thomas Mott. Welcome into Philadelphia Eagles Now, and today, let's go ahead and give you guys the 4 biggest Eagles training camp battles I am going to be keeping an eye on as training camp, of course, starts in a couple of days, and will continue up to the start of the 2020 NFL season. A lot of very interesting battles. We're going to break them down for you guys right now, starting with the number 2 cornerback spot. So here's the deal. Darius Slay, obviously, you traded for him. He's one of the best corners in the National Football League. He is locked in at cornerback number 1. We all understand that. Question is, who will be opposite him the majority of the snaps at cornerback number 2? Now, they have some options here, and the question is, who will get the first crack at it, and who should get the first crack at being the number 2 cornerback, at least at the start of training camp? Well, you guys know, I've said it many times, Avonte Maddox, in my opinion, has been the most consistent. That's where I would go right now at the cornerback number 2 spot, and then, of course, you can maybe play Sidney Jones or Nickell Robey-Coleman at the nickel slot. It really depends on who wins out that battle as well. But right now, if I had to pick, my number 2 cornerback would go ahead and be Sidney Jones. Now, again, it will be an open battle at camp, and the main 2 competitors are going to go ahead and be Avonte Maddox and Sidney Jones. As I've said before, Maddox is my choice, but when you compare the stats between Jones and Maddox, they are, I guess, similar. They don't really tell you a lot, right? Because you'll see more tackles for Avonte Maddox, more picks for Sidney Jones. Both players were up and down last year. Both players started some games. Both players played poorly in some games. Both players didn't start in some games. And so the question is, who has gotten better over the offseason? Who has progressed high enough to go ahead and take the number 2 cornerback spot? We're not going to know, I think, until towards the end of training camp, but my bet right now is that Maddox gets the first crack at it, and if he can just hold down the fort and stay as good as he's been in some football games starting at cornerback for Philadelphia, he will probably go ahead and win that position. Now, snap count percentages from last year tell a little bit of a story. Maddox played a lot more than Sidney Jones, although Jones, of course, was injured at points during the year. But Rasul Douglas played more than Avonte Maddox, but played also more than Jalen Mills, who will now be playing safety for Philadelphia. So, how do we break this down? How do we figure out who starts? Honestly, again, I think it's just a matter of who doesn't stink the most in training camp, because a lot of these guys have had really great games, they've had really bad games, they've been up and down. Whoever's consistent, whoever can get out there and just prove they can be a reliable cornerback opposite of Darius Slay will probably win the job. Again, I think it'll be Avonte Maddox, but this is my first camp battle I'll be keeping an eye on here as training camp, of course, starts on July 28th. Now, who starts at cornerback 2? You guys pick one right here with your comments in the comments section. J for Jones, M for Maddox, or D for Rasul Douglas. Yes, he's technically still there. Pick one. Let me know who it is. Pin comment down below. All right, next interesting battle that we get here is for the number 3 running back spot, as of course Philadelphia has done some interesting things at running back. They have some options there at who will be the number 3 running back, and the question is who is going to win that battle, which, again, in a running back by committee offense, it's not just Miles Sanders and Boston Scott. There will be other running backs who are going to go ahead and try and compete for touches in 2019. Now, Philadelphia, they were good in rushing last year, 14th in the NFL in terms of total yards. I think that can become top 10 at some point during the 2020 season, but the question is, 1, how much better is Miles Sanders in year 2? 2, can Boston Scott step up and be great in 2020? And 3, who will be that third down or third running back in the roster? Now, when you look at the overall depth chart right now, you had Boston Scott at 2, Corey Clement sits there at number 3, and then Holyfield is technically at 4, but there are a lot of options, obviously, in terms of who's going to be that number 3 or that number 4 slot overall. The 4 running backs right now battling for those 2 final spots, because they probably only carry 4 active running backs when we get to the start of the NFL season, are Clement, Holyfield, Warren, and Adrian Killings. I think Boston Scott and Miles Sanders are 2 locks to go ahead and be the 1 and the 2. I think they're very high on Boston Scott, and watching the film from Boston Scott just a couple of days ago during those latter parts of the NFL season, I think he's going to be good to go. Now, he needs to show for 16 games, but I think it'll be Miles Sanders and Boston Scott the 1-2 punch, and then we'll see in terms of Clement, Holyfield, Warren, and Killings. Remember, Corey Clement signed a veteran minimum. That means they're not expecting a lot out of him, despite the fact he was the hero during the playoffs and really the hero during the Super Bowl in 2017. Holyfield, young, was undrafted from Carolina, didn't do anything with the Carolina Panthers, of course, comes over here, so he's a bigger back than the other 2. But it's the same point, unproven. Michael Warren, again, just like Adrian Killings, are both small. Warren's 5'9", even though Philadelphia did have a draftable grade on him. He still was an undrafted free agent. And Adrian Killings is fast and small, but a mega project who will probably be a practice squad running back at best. So this number 3 running back spot is going to be interesting. Again, maybe there's a competition between Coleman and Scott for the number 2, Clement and Scott for the number 2, but I think right now it's going to be Sanders 1, it'll be obviously Boston Scott 2, and then we're going to see what the camp battle battle goes ahead and produces for the number 3 running back overall there in Philadelphia. Now, if you think Philadelphia is going to be a top 10 rushing team, give this video a thumbs up right now. Scroll down below, right by the subscribe button, the little red thumbs up button, little white thumbs up button. Click that thumbs up. You guys think Philadelphia is going to be a top 10 rushing team in 2020. And also, we, of course, get closer and closer to the start of the NFL season. Pick up your official Philadelphia Eagles mask right now at chatsports.com/Eagles mask is the place to go ahead and do it. You have the Carson Wentz official mask. You can also go ahead and get a 2-pack or even a 3-pack of Eagles masks right now. A whole bunch of different logos, a bunch of different looks. All of them, of course, are official. They're going to keep you safe and hopefully make you guys look good whenever you're out and about, because masks, of course, are what is normal right now in the world. Again, link is down below in the description box, chatsports.com/Eagles mask. Okay, moving on. Other camp battles to keep an eye on. How about the number 3 wide receiver going into the start of training camp? Because we understand they added a lot of people. We also understand that Alshon Jeffery will probably be wide receiver 1 or 2 when healthy, but he's likely to start on the physically unable to perform list, meaning that roster spot will be open at least for probably weeks 1, 2, 3, maybe even a little bit longer. And the question really becomes who starts behind DeSean Jackson and Jalen Reagor, because Jackson and Reagor are going to be number 1 and number 2 going into the season, at least going into training camp, barring injuries. So the question then becomes, who's 3, who's 4, how does that battle work out? Now, Philadelphia obviously has a lot of options there at number 3. They obviously have J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and Greg Ward, the 2 incumbents who were there last year and played a lot more towards the end of the season. You also have new draft pick John Hightower, you have Marquise Goodwin. You have options there for an open competition for the 3 and 4 wide receiver spot without Alshon Jeffery. Now, if you're trying to decide between J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, Greg Ward, and Marquise Goodwin, good luck, because the stats from all 3 of them were not very good from last year. I guess Greg Ward leads the pack with 28 catches and 254 yards, but Whiteside really played the entire year, 10 catches, and Goodwin did nothing in San Francisco, 12 catches. All of them only have 1 total touchdown in 2019. You know, remember Greg Ward's one was the game winner against Washington, but that was the only time he found the end zone in Philadelphia. So the question then becomes, who will lead the Eagles in receiving yards in 2020 in terms of overall receiving yards at wide receiver? Because the past couple of years, it's not been a wide receiver that has led the Eagles in terms of total yards. It's been Zach Ertz, it's been the tight end spot, but right now, not only who will win the number 3 wide receiver spot, but who will lead the Eagles in receiving yards. Let me know who you guys think that is, by the way, in the comments section. It's interesting when you go overall in terms of the wide receiver outlook. I know we're focusing on that number 3 wide receiver spot, but when you take a look back at the past 4 years, the leading wide receiver in Philadelphia has been Alshon Jeffery, and then Jordan Matthews. And Alshon Jeffery really has only had 2 decent years in Philadelphia in terms of total yards. Now, of course, in 2019, injured a lot, and yet still at 490 total yards, he was the number 1 wide receiver for Philadelphia, and yet again, he could not stay on the football field. Ertz and Sanders and Goddard all had more receiving yards than he did. So the wide receiver group, again, it's probably the most important position battle that we're going to talk about here in Philadelphia going into training camp, just because it's been such a lackluster position group for so long. Yes, they've had Ertz and Goddard and now Miles Sanders to pick up the slack, and Carson Wentz throwing the football helps out a ton too, but they added all these young wide receivers to try to go ahead and improve the wide receiver core, and so behind Jackson and Reagor, I'm very interested to see who's going to go ahead and step up at the number 3, really the number 3 and the number 4 wide receiver spot. Okay, before we go ahead and do my final position group battle, be sure to subscribe to Philadelphia Eagles now. We approach 12,000 subs here just on the eve of training camp, really, as, of course, the rookies are already there. The veterans, or I see the quarterbacks, I think Wentz will be there tomorrow on the 23rd, and then, of course, everyone else on July 28th. So subscribe for nonstop training camp coverage here on Philadelphia Eagles now. That way you guys are notified whenever we drop the latest video. The final position group battle that a lot of people will not talk about, but will be an actual battle, is for the number 2 defensive tackle spot. So remember, they obviously have Fletcher Cox, and Fletcher Cox is the number 1 D tackle, number 2 D tackle really in the entire NFL, but number 1 in Philadelphia. But with signing Javon Hargrave and, of course, Malik Jackson returning from injured reserve, you're not going to play all 3 on the football field at the same time. At least, more than likely, you won't be playing all 3 at the same time. I'm sure they'll mix it in, and everyone will mix in and play at some point. But starting off base 4-3, who are your 2 D tackles? And the question then becomes, will it be Jackson or Javon Hargrave? Now, Hargrave's going to be the favorite because he, of course, is the new, $30 million man, but Jackson might beat him out. I think I've been very high on Malik Jackson. I think Malik Jackson has a very real chance to be the starting D tackle next to Fletcher Cox, and then Hargrave mixes his way in whenever people need a break or a breather. You got to go back to 2018. be able to rightly compare stats, because even though Hargrave played in 2019, Jackson, of course, played like 20 snaps in the first game against Washington and then was injured. Both of them, very similar stats. I mean, Hargrave has a little bit better stats overall, but Jackson gets to the quarterback in terms of total hits and tackles for a loss, so it's kind of a coin flip on who's going to be better. Maybe you go with Hargrave because he's younger, Jackson a little bit older, but Jackson's proven, I think, the past couple of seasons when he's been healthy to be an absolute menace there at defensive tackle. Now, it doesn't matter who wins overall, right? It's not like we're rooting for one to win over the other. The better player should win and play a little bit more, but the Eagles D-line, as it was built in 2017 and really in 2018 and 2019, they want to rotate people in there, and that's why they have multiple very good defensive tackles and not just one or two. They have really three good ones who are going to play a lot of time. There you go, though. So those are the four big ones that I want to really focus on. You guys want to keep an eye on as the news comes out during training camp, because we'll get all those reports of, this guy looks good today, this guy looks bad today. The main places we're looking are that number 2 cornerback spot, looking at the number 3 running back spot, really the running back spot in general, right? That's going to be an interesting position group battle. Wide receiver, I mean, that's number 1 in terms of what we're going to do in terms of Philadelphia getting better than what they were the past couple of seasons, and who's playing behind Jackson and Reagor. And finally, D tackle, Hargrave versus Jackson. No one's a loser in this one because everyone's going to play, but who's going to start in terms of a base 4-3 week 1 against the Washington Redskins? Again, all time we have for today here on Philadelphia Eagles Now. Trying to break things down for you guys here. Mailbag video, rumor video comes out tomorrow, so all the news will be coming out tomorrow as well, so stay tuned for that. Of course, for Philadelphia Eagles Now, I am Thomas Mott, signing off for the rest of your day.